Yeah, he knows my father's gonna put up with it for 2
Just
days
say hello.
already.
Hi.
I figure that your
Merry
poor father
Christmas.
has put up with it so long, I can take some of the load off of him. And just,
Greg, can't you just hook that right into the TV?
I would like to, but I don't think we have cables. Do we have a?
Did he tell you to bring some cake?
Do you have a videotape cable I can connect between the VCR and the TV so I can check the light?
Yeah, we should. Just take one off the beta.
Oh, say, if you tune in on channel 31,
yeah,
that's the
recent-
Glens Falls station, I think.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be.
All it has is just the weather all day long.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
weather.
that's
the
weather
weather
change.
station.
And it's got the weather for Glens Falls on there all the while.
That's not the Glens Falls.
It's not the Glens Falls station.
Glens Falls station.
No.
No, there's a new one,
let's see.
Channel 8.
Well, just take a look at this here and see
Well,
what it is.
it's the weather station.
It's a weather station, but
Right.
it's
Come on,
it
just
gets
let me,
Glens
uh,
Falls
Right.
all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this will work.
Well, I haven't seen anything on channel 8 from Glens Falls.
Well,
Nothing local.
Oh.
I don't know.
Me either.
Some video input would be. Any video input.
What are you taking me now all this time?
Yeah. Just want to make sure. We're just
Break your camera.
No way.
I can't read it.
Check some help in.
Why are you wearing that mangy old shirt?
It's clean.
You know, your grandmother and I went over to have our pictures taken together.
Yeah.
We never had a picture of the two of us together. And we waited about 2 weeks and I got a letter from them that said they broke the camera. Come back and get a new setup.
Oh my gosh.
And we never went back. I don't want to break their camera again.
Remember that I was going to get my
Oh, that's a
picture
fact.
in West Virginia.
That's outrageous.
And the camera
Broke the camera.
Yeah.
And I got there and I took it. It's
Oh, that's fine. That was it, Dad.
Huh?
Whatever you did, do it again.
Moses.
What are you doing?
It's, the cable thing.
Yeah, look, if you don't ruin the camera now.
Where's the green one then?
It's in there.
You got the green one?
No.
Really?
This is, the green one's the new one.
Ah, technical difficulties.
Please stand by. Like.
That's what I wanted to get is for your pictures with a three together.
Mm-hmm.
What size are those?
5 by 7.
5 or 7? Are they?
Is it not fitting?
I think they're that large. I thought they were about 3 by 5
Are they 3 by 5?
or 4 by 5.
What are they? 5 by
5 by
7?
7.
5 by 7. Except mine takes my face takes
They're taking me all this time.
Huh?
It does work.
They're putting me on that thing all this time.
I don't think so. I think it's not recording now.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
it is?
Yeah, they got me on.
What do you think? Does that look good? That looks great.
That's awful.
Oh,
It's not pretty good.
That's fine, Pat.
I'm sure they will throw over.
Sure.
Suggesting we could.
No, if I sit down right next to you, is that going to make any difference?
Trying to get everybody on the camera.
Nope.
Yeah, that's what it is in my family too. Trying to get everybody out of the house.
Oh, we can-
That is my grandfather and grandmother Smith in Buffalo.
Uh-huh.
That's the first time I ever saw them. There's quite a tale to it, but you get it all on, you couldn't get it all on your reel there if I started telling about it.
Well, go ahead and tell some of it, Dan.
But I have never met my father.
Really?
No.
What are you doing here?
I had a sister before me, and she died about 2 days after she was born. She's buried down in the cemetery in Hudson Falls, Moss Street Cemetery. I was down there trying to find her grave, but I couldn't find it one day, years ago.
Name.
What was her name?
She didn't have a name.
Oh.
They didn't name her yet.
Uh-huh.
She was nearly stillborn almost.
Uh-huh.
You know. And then
You know, there's one thing I want to check before you do some more, and that's to make sure that I've got audio. Okay? 'Cause I don't want you to spin yarns and then me not get them. Okay?
this yours, mine.
Yours is not really nice, but it's
Isn't? I thought that would have been to tell a story. I'm sorry. I didn't want.
That's all right.
Where are you going?
I want to make sure I'm getting the audio. I'll be right back.
I think he has a headphone or a speaker or an earphone or something.
Oh.
Why is he in the lower left-hand corner now?
That looks better that way.
Oh.
You goose.
You know, going back and forth, it makes me think. Betty worked up to
You want to run the audio through it too?
Woodhaven Villa.
Huh?
No, I just wanted to ensure that I was getting it.
When she was in school. She worked there in the summers, summer vacation, up to Lake George. And I went up one time, I took my camera with me and I wanted to take her picture while she was there. And Vic always wanted to get in the picture with everything. So I just
Who, me? I never.
shoulders of Betty, and he never was even in the picture.
Deja vu.
Made me think when you went back and forth there.
Deja vu.
Don't ever.
It will hurt.
Okay. Are you? How are you checking to see if you got the
I
audio?
plugged the thing in and I put it in my ear and I listened to it and there was sound, so I know that I'm getting audio.
Oh. Oh. Okay.
Okay.
now.
I've had a little trouble with that microphone, so I want to make sure I was getting the audio. Now you were telling me about your sister.
Yes. And during the time that my mother was pregnant with me, my father left. He wanted to go to Buffalo. He was a stationary engineer.
What, he stayed in one place all the time?
Yeah. He worked in a shirt factory.
Oh.
And in those days, they didn't operate the sewing machines.
I thought it was
electrically.
funny.
All done
I
by
thought they
steam.
worked at a greeting card
Hey,
factory.
Dad.
They were writing paper factory.
And there was a shirt factory, Fowler's shirt factory on Park Street,
Right factory?
nearly across from Elm Street. And he worked there with a man by the name of Judd Fielding. And he wanted to get on the Great Lakes and to be an engineer on one of the boats. My mother wouldn't go with him. She was a home girl. She wouldn't leave, so he went alone. And that's the last she ever saw of him, and it's the last I ever saw of him.
What year was that, Dad?
And what's that?
What year was that?
Well, the year I was born, 1902. Yeah. So it was in 1902. And he must have been around the first part of 1902. But anyhow,
Why is that?
I never knew anything about my Smith relatives until I married my wife, Vic's mother, and they was a man and his son lived next to each other. The old man was named Hiram Hyde, and come to find out, he was brother of my grandmother, Smith,
Mm-hmm.
this woman here. And then I found out through those people that my grandmother and grandfather was in Buffalo. And my wife, I worked in Alliance, Ohio at one time when I first got out of school for the Morgan Engineering Company. I worked in the pay office there. I had an uncle and aunt, Aunt Maud and Uncle Frank, lived there. He was an engineer, not an engineer, but a hammerman for the Morgan Engineering Company. And they did locomotive repairs. So he told me if I came out there when I got out of school, I could get a job there. So I worked in a pay office, and I operated a comptometer and a graphotype machine on the payrolls. We had 2,800 people working there at that time, and there was the paymaster and 4 of us beside him working in the office, and we paid by check. I'm getting off track here.
That's all right.
And we went out there to my uncle and aunt's after I was married, or after we were married, and I had the address of my grandmother and grandfather. And on the way back from Ohio, we stopped in Buffalo, and I went down one of the main streets there, and I saw a cop walking the beat. And I stopped the car and I asked him where, I don't remember the street now, but I asked him what such and such a street was. Why, he says, only down here 2 blocks, and turn left 1 block and turn right. So I found them.
Uh-huh.
And they had an upstairs apartment. And I went to the door. The inside door was open, and the screen door was open. It was on, and I rang the bell, and my grandmother came down the stairs, and I asked her, I said, "Is this Mrs. Smith?" And she says, "Yes." And I said, "Do you know who I am?" "No." And in the meantime, my grandfather was coming down the stairs, and he got a look at me, and he says, "My God, Lloyd." That was my father. I looked so much like him, see. And so we went up there and visited with them for a while, and it was late. They had a small apartment. Would have to find a place to stay. And they told us that my father's brother, Uncle Elvin, lived in Corfu, which is only about 25 miles from there.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there that day,
Mm-hmm.
and we stayed there overnight. And I found that my father was living in Cleveland. And so we tried to get him on the telephone, and some way or other he found out that he was out of town and would be back on Monday. He had a business there, and he was a estimate engineer for heating systems for office buildings like that, big buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And he represented the Pierce Butler and Pierce Radiator Company in Oswego, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and Heinz Chimney Company in Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and others. But on stationery, after I had written to him, on stationery, I got the letterheads
Uh-huh.
of those two places. Well, we went to Corfu, and my uncle and my aunt, and there was three cousins, and no, I haven't got a picture in here of them. I've
Hold
got
on.
it home,
That's all right. We'll
Sure.
get pictures of it after. Does that make sense?
No, do it now.
Okay.
Why don't you just put, yeah, just hold that up, Dad, so that we can get a picture of it.
Oh, I can tell you what they are.
Well, yeah, but
So,
hold it up.
we
so-
went back the next year
Uh-huh.
and spent a week with Uncle Alvin and Aunt Olive, and then we became beautiful. We
Now, who was
became,
that?
very close, and they came summers to see us, and at that time he was well, he wasn't well, and he was a veteran of World War One. And Mount McGregor at that time, which is only 4 miles from where we lived, was a hospital, a veterans hospital up on the mountain. And so I told him about it, and he got in touch with them, and he went there, was there for nearly 2 months, trying to recuperate. And but he wouldn't quit smoking. He had to keep smoking, and that was his trouble with emphysema, I think, mostly. They didn't know what it was at that time, didn't have a name for it, but anyhow. He passed away, I don't remember the year, but then Aunt Olive, his wife, used to come when we lived at Shady Acres. She used to come and stay a week or 2 weeks at a time. She flew, I don't know what you met her. You
I met her.
remember her, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah. And the last time she came, she, we took her to the airport, the Glens Falls Airport. And when she left, we bid her goodbye, and the tears were running right down her cheeks. And she had a premeditation, I believe, that she would never see us again. And she didn't, because she died right after that. I don't remember what from, but she must have had something wrong that she died. Well, that's a little story about how I happened to meet my people.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, this man is.
This is my grandfather Smith.
Grandpa Smith. Your Grandpa Smith.
Yeah, and this is my grandmother Smith. Her name was Hyde, and I started to tell you. Her brother, Hiram, built boats across the road from where Madge lived, and she went to a country school up about half a mile from the house, and she used to cut through his workshop there, and he put shavings on her hair, for curls, and she told me about that, how she knew him so well. And he had a son that lived nearby there, and I never can remember his name, but also he had a daughter, and she lived on Moss Street there, and her husband ran a little a filling station. And then there was another brother, Omar, O-M-A-R, Hyde. I never met him. And he was a chauffeur for some people down in Albany. And then the other brother, some way or other, I don't recall, his name was Melville. And I was operating the Hudson Food Store, manager at the time in South Glens Falls. And his daughter, Mabel, had married a man by the name of Parks, owned a Parks Feed Store and a grist mill in Glens Falls. And they lived on the corner of Main and 3rd Street. They had a beautiful home there. And that's where the South Glens Falls First National Bank is. That's where their home was. And he came there and to see them. And several times he came to the store where I was. In the summertime he'd come up and visit.
Okay,
And he ended up
give at least another
in a
hour
nursing
after
home.
the-
And he died at 101 years
by
old.
the directions
wow.
on the packet.
And my grandparents all lived in old age.
Mm-hmm.
My father, after I had corresponded with him, found out
I got
who he
one
was.
pop up one.
I corresponded with him with 3 or 4 letters,
I usually-
and he wanted
I
me
like
to
the
come
butter
out there
balls with the frozen,
in Cleveland,
but I didn't get one this time.
and
See how it is.
wanted us to come there to see him. Well, we were going to see him. We went the next year, and to Uncle Alvin's, and
I don't know what it is they put in.
I was told to come alone, not to bring my family.
My mind is kind
And he had a
See how
woman
it
out
is.
there.
of, I'll go back. And she
They
got
lived in the
both.
Westlake Hotel. They had a apartment there. Dude had money.
Better
Uh-huh.
pass it
Yeah.
on now.
But he lost it, most of it in the stock market crash in 1929.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He was
They're always
an
late the
estimate
night before.
engineer,
Yeah.
They're like
and,
just-
for office building. First he went on the Great Lakes in 1911. They had a strike on the Great Lakes, and he left, and he was a chief engineer on one of the boats. And he went to work for an insurance company, and he was an inspector for mine machinery for this company. And he traveled through the United States, Canada, and Alaska, and these mining camps, and to check the new machinery. They took insurance out on, and so on and so forth. Well, when the war broke out in 1914, World War I, there was a great demand. Great Britain, there was a great demand for all kinds of machinery. Well, he knew where so much of this machinery was. He opened up a repair shop up in Toronto, Canada, and he went all through the United States, Alaska, and Canada, and picked up all this old machinery and shipped it to this place in Toronto that he had, this repair shop, and overhauled all this old machinery and rebuilt it and sold it to the British government.
Uh-huh.
And when in 1918 he came back to the United States, and my uncle told me that he was worth $250,000 at that
Wow.
time. Yeah. But he was a high liver for one thing, and in 29, well, he lost most of it. You know.
What do we got on the next
That's
page?
the story of that.
Okay, that takes care of the first picture.
Yeah, that's the first page. No, I got him on the second page.
No,
This here is my father. He sent this picture to me when one of his letters he sent, and that was taken when he was in his 50s. And this picture up in this corner is one that my mother had. It was taken when he was just about the time he was married, when he was a young fellow in his early 20s.
it's got the Smith ears.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it all started.
And then this is me. That was taken over in Lake Luzerne, right after Madge and I were married. And that was on Lake Luzerne, on a dock there. And we took my picture. I have other pictures, I guess. Yeah. And this is me before I was married. That's a picture taken when I lived on First Street. I don't know how old I was, just, well, I must have been 7, 8 years old. And this here is my mother. And this is Betty. That was taken on First Street. And my mother hadn't worked in many years because she had, well, they
Parkinson's.
called it the palsy in those days, but Alzheimer's disease.
Alzheimer's?
Parkinson's. Parkinson's.
Parkinson's disease, that's right. And that's what she had. She couldn't work. She was all bent over when her last days. And she was in a nursing home for 7 years up on Ridge Street. And this is another picture. It's pretty well faded out. The first time we went out, of course, Betty went with us, and she was, Madge was carrying Terry. He wasn't born yet. Next year we went out, Terry was a little fellow, and there's a picture of my grandmother and grandfather with Betty, and he's holding Terry.
Uh-huh.
There.
No, the copy was on
And these are other pictures that were taken of my mother and my aunt Elizabeth. She was my mother's twin sister, but they were not alike. They were absolutely opposite in personality, everything.
Uh-huh.
Aunt Liz would fight at the drop of the hat, and my mother was an easy goer. And she
Is this both of them?
this is my grandmother and a neighbor. I think that's Mrs. LaJoy. And there's another old timer from First Street. Mrs. Martel, a French lady. They're both French. They were, and they. Well, I haven't got a picture of Mrs. Martel, but she and Mrs. LaJoy, my grandmother, Mrs. Bemis, they all were very close associated, and they always called each other Mrs. Martel, Mrs. Bemis, or Mrs. LaJoy. They never called them by their first names. They always called each other Mrs. And that was unusual. And they were the old timers on First Street. And that bottom one there is a picture of my mother. And Betty. I guess that's all that's in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. This here is a picture of my wife, Madge, and I. And this was the 1933 Chevy Roadster. I wish I had that today. It'd be worth something.
Yeah.
An antique. That was taken over to my mother's house in the side yard. And this is the same time. These three pictures are all taken the same time. This one here, you can see my aunt.
That's your grandmother.
What's that?
That's it. That's Betty and Mom.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Hey,
Now
Dad,
here's another.
the focus button is right here. If you want to turn that off,
Oh, okay.
and it slides back, and it's back in autofocus.
Oop. Where is it? This
The
one
gray
here?
button right here. That turns autofocus off and autofocus on.
Okay.
This is my grandmother's brother, Uncle Joe Parker, and he lived over in Conklinville. And he had 4 sons. I used to go over there hunting with him. He owned a very big tract of land over there, lumber,
Just look at the setup, Patrick, that's okay.
Uh,
Take a picture so you can study it later.
over near Epner's Lake and Jenny Lake. And those 2 mountains, he owned those 2 mountains between
wow.
where he lived and Jenny Lake and Epner's Lake. And we could hunt all day on his property, deer hunting.
Uh-huh.
And he he was a character. He I can remember we went over there one time to hunt, and there was I think 4 sons. Yeah, had 4 sons. Well, we all went out to hunt. My grandfather, or my Uncle Joe, my great grandfather. No, not my grandfather, my grandmother's brother. He always wore a swallowtail coat when he went hunting,
What's a swallowtail coat?
so he could walk with his gun and his across his arm and his hand in his pocket. And he had a red patch on the back of his coat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So his wife, Sate, her name was, she cooked lunches for each one of us. And she put the bags on the table, and we took the bags and we put them in our jackets, you know, for pockets, our hunting jackets. And he put his in, and it went down, it was down near the swallowtail of the coat and back, going all the way down. And at noontime, we got together to have our lunch. He took that package out, opened it up, and there was nails in it. He carried this bag of nails with him. That was his lunch. And Bill, his son Bill, he says, "Dad," he says, "couldn't you tell by the weight that those were nails?" He says, "I thought they were some of your grandmother's biscuits."
Dad,
Well, you know,
tell him when you took that picture, what he did that day.
at that time, what's that?
Tell him when you took that picture, tell him what he had done.
About walking?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I was just going to say, at that time when I took that picture, he lived in Conklinville, and that was about 5 miles out of Luzerne and Hadley, the old Conklinville. That's flooded over now with the Saginaw Reservoir.
Oh.
And but he didn't live right in the inside. He lived across the river from Conklinville, but in the Conklinville area. Well, he walked from there over the mountain from Luzerne to Glens Falls to come over and visit my grandmother. He walked over one day, and he was in his late 60s when he did that, I believe. And when he stayed overnight, and that was enough. He wanted to go back, so he went back the next day, walked back over the mountain, and to Luzerne, and over to Hadley, and up to Conklinville. And that was about, it was about a good 20-mile walk.
Wow, that's a good distance.
Yeah. And the last time I saw him, Madge and I went over to visit Uncle Joe. I always called him Uncle Joe, but he was a great uncle. And he was in bed, set up in one of the sitting rooms, not the living room, but the sitting room. And I said to my aunt, or his wife, I said, "What's wrong with Uncle Joe?" "Oh," she says, "nothing." She said, "The old fool thinks he's been on earth long enough, and so he wants to die. So he's gone to bed to die." And that's just what he did.
Oh my gosh.
And he was 90-some odd years old then. Yeah. And he was lively and all right at the time that we were there. Yeah. But he said he lived his life, and that was all he wanted. He was quite a character. This is my mother. 2 pictures of her. That was taken. I think it was taken at the time of Madge and our anniversary, 25th anniversary. And she was in a nursing home at the time. And I went over and got her and brought her over. And she sat there in the living room in the chair. And when we got ready to eat, Terry went and fixed her meal for her, and he got down on his knees in front of her and he fed her her meal. And nobody asked him to do it or told him to do it, but he did it on his own. And he was a young fellow, just about like Patrick. I was so thoughtful I always remembered that, what he did. Yeah. And this is another picture of my mother and Aunt Liz, the twins. At the time of Margaret, my cousin, Margaret Schroep, married, that's my Aunt Maud. She lived in Alliance, Ohio at the time. And she was there to Albany to Margaret's wedding. And I took her picture on the step of the house. They had just built a new home, Aunt Grace and Uncle Fred had. I can't think of the name of the street now, but was in a beautiful home.
Kent Street,
Home.
was that Kent Street? Was that in Kent Street? Kent Street?
What street?
Kent?
Jeff?
Kent!
No,
Oh.
no. Hank Grace bought that house afterwards.
Oh, okay.
After he died, no. Yeah, this is off in Washington Avenue. Up near, well, the park where we played football when we played Albany. We played them in the snowstorm down there.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's another story, but this is a picture of her when she was there for the wedding.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this is Bob and Margaret coming down out of the church at what time they were married. That's what it is.
Bob Overrocker, this Bob Overrocker's nephew works with me at Gardenway.
No, kid.
Yep.
What do you know?
I saw his name in the phone book,
Yeah.
and I went over and I told him, I said, do you know a Bob Overrocker? And he says, yeah. He says, I know two. He says, I've got an Uncle Bob, and he has a son Bob. And he said, my Uncle Bob was married, and they had his son Bob, and then he got divorced.
Yeah.
I told him, well, that was my cousin that he was married to.
Yeah.
And so his cousin is my cousin, so we're not related because there's no blood there. But
Well, she's my cousin.
oh, she was. Yeah, I told him. I said,
Second cousin
second cousin.
of yours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Betty got a letter not too long ago, and he remarried, and he and his new wife went to Hawaii on their honeymoon.
You're talking about my cousin Bob?
Yeah. Well, it's my cousin.
You're talking about Margaret's son.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No. Yeah, Margaret's son. That's right.
Okay.
And they stopped Margaret. She's living in California, and she's in bad condition for health.
Yeah.
And when she found out, Margaret did, that this girl that he married, why, her people are millionaires, and he struck it rich. I don't know. I haven't heard from her any more about it since. But I've got Margaret's address in California, and I had a nice note from her at Christmas time, or a Christmas card. And I had written to her and given her some information that she wanted. And she thanked me for it in a card. And so I'm going to write to her, and I have another Margaret that lived out in Ohio. Yeah, that's her. That's her picture, Margaret Schroed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then on this next page is my cousin Wanda Reynolds. Her name is Wanda Bemis. Uncle Ike's daughter, my Uncle Ike's daughter. And she was born in Schenectady. And when her father died, he left some money to her, and she came and lived with us in Glens Falls. My grandmother was the administrator of the will, and she came to live with us, and she was allowed so much money for board and room and clothing and like that out of this money. And when she was 18 years old, why, she took it.
Uh-huh.
And she went to Schenectady. But during that time, she was a dance instructor. She had a dancing school in Glens Falls. And also, while she was here, she went to Glens Falls High School at the same time I did. She's only 20 days younger than I am. I was born on the 6th of October, and she was born on the 26th. And she also took organ lessons from, oh, what's his name? He was a great organist, and at the Methodist Church in Glens Falls. And she was so well along, so far along in her organ playing that he wanted her to take over his students and go on with teaching organ lessons. He took the job of organist down to Union College when he left Glens Falls. Tidmarsh, his name was. Elmer Tidmarsh, that was it. And but she wouldn't take it. She wanted to dance, and she had these dancing classes. Yeah. And quite a few years she did in Glens Falls. Now we'll go back to the time that we went out to Uncle Alvin's in Carfield. When we went back there for, no, that was taken when we first was out there, I think. Yeah, that picture, because I don't know whether it was or not. But that's Uncle Alvin here.
That's his truck, is it?
That's his truck. And his trucking was bringing cans of milk into the city to a dairy. He went around to the farms and picked up cans of milk, 40-quart cans, and took it into the city. And I went with him on a couple of his trips, and we would swing around to Grandma and Grandpa's and spend a half an hour there, then go on home. But he kind of looked after them. And for many years, my father, going back to him, he sent money orders to them every month to pay for all of their expenses. He paid for their living for several years when he was in the dough himself. Yeah. And
Like, who are these people here? Can put the pause on there.
I can't tell who that is at all.
Hey, how you doing?